Look, ladies and gentlemen, Demarcus Cousins. He nearly got into it up there in Puerto Rico. He had a blunder. This was definitely not a good look for Demarcus Cousins. No matter what went on, no matter how it's spent, it's the former NBA player Demarcus Cousins. Loses his cool, loses his temper. Demarcus always comes off, like this for whatever reason. And I thought we was getting away from some of these antics from Demarcus Cousins because we seen him in just doing so much other more positive things. Obviously, the podcast, the list goes on. But Demarcus has never gave up his right to play. It's not a good look because Demarcus he lets all of the stuff get to him. Clearly Demarcus is upset. He left a lot of money on the table. You got to think about Demarcus. I don't know his financial situation, but prior to that, Achilles, tear, this man was en route to making a boatload of cash. He had a max deal waiting for him. After he got hurt, he had nothing waiting for him. So it's very messed up. What happened to him. They never even offered the man a contract. And he ended up just signing with the Golden State Warriors. So I mean, it's just messed up what happened to him. But I don't know what went on, but I do know it was a situation with some kids. He nearly wanted to fight some kids. Um, and it's like now you at the game, with all these people in the stands. I mean, clearly the heckling, the things people are saying are getting to him. He has to have some tunnel vision, especially when you're trying to go overseas, you trying to do all this and that. Would he have done this in the States, with a fan? Do they have the security, like they have in the United States? Because that was a pretty close. That could have easily been another Malice in the Palace because they was trying to get at him as he was walking out. You seen drinks flying, so it seemed very basically. It looked like the Leonard Fournette situation in football when he had a bunch of things thrown at him. That's what happened to Demarcus. You in another country. You doing this, and this. I mean, you don't know what went on, but I did see some fingers getting thrown out there. Uh, I feel sad for Demarcus Cousins. Demarcus was one of my favorite players ever, to play. I remember, like, if you look at all of these big men, especially the ones that's a little older, you look at AD, um, who else? Joel Embiid, um, Jokic. This guy Demarcus was in that elk. He was right in that circle with them. Some people argue Demarcus was the best one. I believe well, before Jokic blossomed, you know, it, people were saying that Demarcus Cousins was the best big man in the NBA. It was times where I was watching Demarcus Cousins, I thought he was the best player in the world. And I'm talking going back to Sacramento. He was having some performances where I just couldn't believe it. So just to see that fall, from grace for him, and obviously it has everything to do with injuries, no more, no less. Uh, it, it's truly horrifying, to say the least. It truly is. I'm very upset, that this happened to DeMarcus Cousins and he's relegated to this. I think that he really should retire, but I think that he really need this money. That's what I'm saying. You talking about a guy who was about to be set. Like if you see what happened with Isaiah Thomas, um, very similar. He didn't ever receive that no paper, especially that money he was supposed to get. He was supposed to get a big max. After that year in New Orleans, when he got to New Orleans, messed up because they were solid. When he got to New Orleans, and then when he tore his Achilles, that was hurtful. The New Orleans Pelicans, if he didn't get hurt, I think they would have won. I think they would have definitely beat Golden State. They would have been a serious issue, for them at that time because You had Rondo, you had Drew Holiday, um, obviously AD, and like Demarcus just took it over the top. He just took it over the top. It just would have been something special. So the game, and that's something that I rarely say this, but the game was robbed when DeMarcus Cousins, never returned to form. The game was robbed from one of the next great big men in the history of the game of basketball. That's what was robbed from us. And with all of these things I'm saying is the reason. How you think DeMarcus feel? Now you see why it don't take much for him to flip. If you say anything left to him, he liable to try to go upside your head. It's just to see a guy like him playing basketball, pick up on the streets, against some kids, it's like that now you playing with some in Puerto Rico. It just like I said, it's not a good look. It's just not a good look. So I mean, I don't know what can be done. Can the NBA give this man a job? They moving to NBC. They doing all these different things. Can they do anything for DeMarcus Cousins to where he's not out here relegated to this kind of stuff? This buffoonery. Clearly, he was a young man when he got hurt, and they wasn't really giving no real money, and he kept getting hurt. That's not something that he was hurt, and then, he was getting injured. Playing at that NBA level, I think was doing something to him. And then even when he got healthy, I remember when he went to Golden State, he was in the finals. He had some good games in the finals and got hurt again. I remember when he got to go, he played pretty solid, when he came back from injury. I remember DeMarcus Cousins' first game back, people was scared and trembling. They ain't know what to expect from DeMarcus Cousins, but he don't have that. He lost his athleticism when he came back, from the Achilles. He wasn't dunking on people. He wasn't just rising up like, what the hell, where'd all this come? He wasn't doing that no more. DeMarcus was more of a spot up 3-point shooter. He did that very well. That's something that he excelled at. He already was a decent shooter already, prior to the injury. So he expanded on that 3-point game even more, coming back from injury, knowing that he wasn't going to be able to bang as much as some people knew and would have liked. But let's get in the comment section. Y'all let me know your thoughts. It's Flight Sports TV. DeMarcus Cousins, man, is he going out sad? Should he retire? Let me know your thoughts and comments and concerns, and let's politic. It's Flight Sports TV. You already know what it is.